John Steinbeck was born February 27, 1902 and died December 28, 1968. He grew up in Salinas, California's agricultural valley, where he was the only boy of his 3 siblings. In 1919, he attended Stanford University and enrolled in literature and writing classes. He then married Carol Henning and moved to the Monterey region of the California coast. Throughout the rest of his adult life, John Steinbeck, between his many jobs, a caretaker, journalist, and filmmaker, etc., created several famous novels, like The Pastures of Heaven, The Grapes of Wrath, Of Mice and Men, and of course The Pearl. During this time, he wrote differently than most writers. While other authors wrote about events outside of America and across the sea, he based his novels more on what people living in America could relate to, what was going on during that time, and also his own life experiences. People took interest of his stories for these reasons. Examples include how his novel, The Grapes of Wrath, took place during the time of the Dust Bowl. In 1962, John Steinbeck won a Nobel Prize for his works, and towards the end of his life, he moved to New York City with his 3rd wife. He soon died of congestive heart failure. Even though he is not alive today, his writings continue to impact readers all over the United States, bringing America's history and his own history to life.
The Pearl is written in a third-person omniscient point of view. The narrator is an external character telling the story, seemingly giving the reader insight about not only Kino, the protagonist, but the opinions of his wife, Juana, and perspectives of the doctor in his past life. The reader is also taken into the heads of various minor characters and the Pearl buyers that Kino encounters. The narrator is all-knowing of others' mindsets and actions throughout the novel. The story is written in the past tense in a reminiscence perspective, as it tells of an already happened defining event that took place in the fishing village.
In The Pearl, one of the many memorable quotes in the 6th chapter is, "He watched the ants moving, a little column of them near to his foot, and he put his foot in their path. Then the column climbed over his instep and continued on its way." Page 70. This quotation represents how when the ants were faced with an obstacle, they did not panic or lose sight of their goal. Instead, they adjusted and found a different way of doing things. The second main quote is when Kino looked into the Pearl, he saw Coyotito sitting in the little desk in a school, just as Kino had once seen it through an open door. And Coyotito was dressed in a jacket, and he had on a white collar and a broad silken tie. Page 23. This quote shows what the Pearl's wealth could offer the family. It could give them a good, happy life with a great education for Coyotito. He saw what the Pearl's worth was and how much it could do for them, which is why it was so important.
The songs remained. Kino knew them, but no new songs were added. That does not mean that there was no personal songs. In Kino's head, there was a song now, clear and soft, and if he had been able to speak of it, he would have called it the Song of Family. Page 23. He is thinking of family, and even though there were no new songs in the Pearl, he was thinking of one in his head. But the pearls were accidents, and the finding of one was luck, a little pat on the back by God or the gods both. The pearl divers believe that if you do find a pearl, it is a gift or treasure from the gods, and you have to be extremely lucky to find one.
Throughout the entire book, The Pearl, by John Steinbeck, imagery was present. The first example of imagery was on page 5. The thorn tail jerked upright, and at that moment, the laughing Coyotito shook the rope and the scorpion fell. Kino's hand leaped to catch it, but it fell past his fingers, fell on the baby's shoulders, landed, and struck. This quote helps me picture the environment and the action that is happening. I can picture what the scorpion might look like, and it also helps me develop an idea of what Coyotito and Kino may look like. Another quote that really helps me visualize what is happening is, Kino moved next to the hummock, and then beside it, under a little overhang, he saw a very large oyster lying by itself, not covered with its clinging brothers. The shell was partly open, for the overhang protected this ancient oyster, and in the lip-like muscle, Kino saw a ghostly gleam, and the shell closed down. Page 18. This quote is one of the most important quotes throughout the entire story because it completely changes the plot. The picture that I can see is bright turquoise water, and then in a little cave, he sees this humongous oyster. In the same chapter, he found the pearl of the world. This was described as the quote, "It was large as a seagull's egg. It was the greatest pearl in the world." Page 19. In my mind, I couldn't really picture the pearl, but the image on the front of the book helped me. To me, John Steinbeck had described almost everything in the book as something that you could imagine.
In The Pearl, Kino can be seen as the protagonist, and in my opinion, there were many antagonists, which include the doctor, the thieves, and the pearl divers. all contributed to Kino's craving of money for his family and his violent actions of which he was not aware of. The doctor motivated Kino to get the pearl by stating that he would not help Kino's son without payment. If the doctor had offered to help Kino's penniless family and treat his son without payment, then the pearl would have never caused the breakdown of his family. The thieves made Kino into an erratic and overprotective person. The thieves made him think that the pearl was special and had worth, and made him aware that people highly desired it. The pearl divers aggravated Kino about the pearl's worthlessness. This caused Kino to become angry and felt he was misled on the pearl's actual cost. As a result, because of Kino's desperation to cure his son, Kino's character changed from a loving father to a greedy madman.
The pearl scene is set in a fishing village along the coast of the Baja Peninsula in La Paz, Mexico. The year of the novel is negotiable, as it is never explicitly stated, but probably took place in the early 20th century, as that is when the Baja pearl industry was favorable and before artificial pearls hit the market. The town as a whole is very connected and compact, as everyone knows of one another's affairs, such as the pearl finding and the stinging of Kino's child. The village seems to have a nervous system and a head and shoulders and feet. News seems to move faster than small boys can scramble and dart to tell it, faster than women can call it over the fences. The size and familiarity among people within the environment is prevalent through how involved everyone is with one another. The village itself is mysterious in a sense that the Gulf is mirage-like. The eerie vibe is vividly portrayed through Steinbeck's usage of imagery, as the uncertain air that magnified some things and blotted out others hung over the whole Gulf, so that all sights were unreal and vision could not be trusted, so that the sea and land had sharp clarities and the vagueness of a dream. The deceptive role the setting plays in the story goes hand in hand with the prospect that things aren't always as they initially appear. On the beach, Steinbeck writes that part of the far shore disappeared into a shimmer that looked like water. There was no certainty in seeing, no proof that what you saw was there or wasn't there. Parallels can be found between the illusory of the Gulf and the deceiving pearl, which was a sign of great wealth before its negative effects took place.
The novel The Pearl is highly symbolic. It uses many different forms of symbolism. However, one of its main symbols is the pearl. The pearl is portrayed as a symbol of greed and selfishness. In Chapter 3, it repeatedly announces that Kino had found the pearl of the world. It repeats this to emphasize the importance of the outcome the pearl would have on someone's life. This pearl was a new start. It was going to give them a new life and new aspirations. As the pearl gets more heard of, though, it stirred up something infinitely black and evil in the town. The pearl then began to bring evil and greed into the once simple life of Kino. The pearl eventually became less associated with hope and more associated with selfish intentions. Therefore, the pearl was symbolized as a beacon of hope, but later on as a symbol of greed and evil.
Joanna is a round character because she does undergo changes like going from living in a small home to being on the run with Kino. She's Kino's wife and she's a mother to her infant Kyle Tito. She has long black hair with 2 braids tied at the end, and the author describes her eyes as little reflected stars. She is loyal, hardworking, and respectful. She is Kino's wife and helps him along the way, but when he gets too possessive over the pearl, she tries to help him by attempting to get rid of it. She grows throughout the story and tries to stay on the safe side. When Kyle Tito was bit from the scorpion, the author said, well, Joanna had the baby in her arms now. She found the puncture of redness starting from it already. And after he got bit, she immediately went to comfort him. The priest is a flat character. He doesn't change much throughout the story, but he does want the pearl like everyone else. He is well-mannered, cultured, and spiritual. He is in need of money for a church and wants to try and get some money from Kino. He told Kino and Joanna to repeat his sermons and prayers and reminds them to thank God for the strength. He doesn't change, but he does continue to tell them to pray. After finding out that Kino found a pearl, he comes to visit him and says, "It has come to me that thou hast found a great fortune, a great pearl." He is also interested in the pearl and tries to persuade them into letting him marry them.
2 important characters in The Pearl are Kino and the Doctor. Kino's protective of things he loves, such as his family and the pearl. He's also determined to get things he wants, like selling the pearl for a high price. Lastly, he is skillful and knows what to do in a time of danger. The Doctor is smart, selfish, and mischievous. He is selfish because when Kino and Wanda needed his help, he only refused because they were poor and had no money to offer in exchange for the medical assistance for their young one. He is mischievous because he was hoping he could steal the pearl and take it for his own. We know this because he was trying to figure out where in Kino's house the pearl was hidden while he helped the baby. Kino does not have nice clothes. In fact, they are all beat up and his once white clothes are now light brown. The doctor has clean, nice clothes that could keep him warm and presentable. Kino changes by going from being joyful and happy of his findings of the pearl to envying everyone in fear that they will try and steal his pearl.
The song symbolism in the pearl is used throughout Kino's life experience to show his feelings at the moment in the novel. At the beginning of chapter 1, before the pearl is welcomed into their home, Kino hears the song of family. The song of family represents Kino's emotions of peace and happiness. He is like this because he wakes up in the morning, everything is easygoing, and so far nothing bad is happening. But soon he hears a song of evil. This indicates that he's feeling a sense of ill will and sin around him. The song of evil is triggered by a scorpion next to his child, Cotito, which soon punctures Cotito in the shoulder. Kino and Juana can hear this song throughout the novel when they have possession of the pearl. Kino also hears the song of danger, which he hears when he is about to kill the hunters trying to find them. Overall, the songs not only give the readers a better understanding of what the characters' emotions are through their journey from beginning to end, but also gives the novel a deeper meaning symbolically.
Usage of figurative language is highly concentrated in Steinbeck's work, especially with devices such as personification and simile. The workings of the fishing village and the connect between people is translated to the reader almost solely through personification. The homes along the coast are said to be hugging the beach, while the town itself has emotions. For instance, Steinbeck writes, "The nerve of the town were pulsing and vibrating with news," page 21, when Kino found the pearl. The brush houses are described as belching people, and the doorways as spewing children when Kino goes to sell his prized pearl. Even the environment and the natural forces within it are personified. The wind of the morning ruffled the water of the estuary and whispered through the mangroves. Page 39. The wind is also said to scream and cry in some parts of the story, creating a vivid picture in the reader's mind. Steinbeck employs similes to describe his characters in the pearl. In a violent scene between Kino and his trackers, he whirled and struck the head of the seated man like a melon. The third man scrabbled away like a crab. Kino has become as cold and as deadly as steel. Page 87. Kino's disregard for life is emphasized through the author's comparison of the man's head to a melon, while Kino's demeanor is described as hard and cold. The pearl's perfection and evolved horridness is also apparent through the comparisons Steinbeck makes. In the beginning of the novel, the pearl is referred to as perfect as the moon, yet once it has caused detriments to Kino's family, it is viewed as repulsive, like a malignant growth. The pearl's attractiveness and later disgust is emphasized through Steinbeck's potent similes.
The Pearl is a novella novel in chronological order based on 6 chapters. The Pearl is a simple plot book. The plot starts in a remote seaside village where a young family of Kino, Juana, and their baby son, Cotito. Although they are poor, the family lives a relatively happy life. The rising action focuses on Cotito when he gets stung by a scorpion and the family cannot pay for the medical bills, so the family goes pearl diving in hope of finding one to pay for the medical bills. As more find out about the pearl, robbers and thieves begin to come after the pearl and are willing to do whatever it takes to get it. The climax is when they are faced with a disaster when Kino finds the canoe destroyed and Juana finds the house has been set on fire. Barely being able to escape, the family hides at Juan Thomas's house until it is safe for them to leave for the capital to sell the pearl. When the falling action begins, the family leaves to travel up the mountain to get to the capital city. Kino realizes they are being followed and he tries to distract the trackers from finding them by making false trails. When he finds the trackers, he attempts to attack them, yet at the same moment, both Cotito and the gunshot are heard. After Kino kills the trackers and rushes back to the cave, he finds that his son has been shot. In resolution, carrying the dead child, they come out from the mountain and arrive back at their village, where the community silently watches them. Kino then takes the pearl and throws it as hard as he can back into the ocean.
The type of irony used in the pearl is situational irony, what is expected to happen and what really does happen. When Kino says, "My son will go to school," he expects to be able to pay for his son's school and give him the life that he deserves. Kino's first thoughts of finding the pearl were his family is going to have a good life and he's going to give their son the life that he deserves. But the events in the story lead to a horrible ending instead of a good one like we expect. The dramatic irony used by the author is when the hunters think Coyote's cry is a coyote, but we, the audience, would actually Coyote's cry. Verbal irony would be when the doctor mentioned that it would be a shame if the pearl was stolen before they could sell it. The pearl uses multiple figures of speech. He uses a simile for Joanna. She looked at him, her eyes cold as the eyes of a lioness. The author is comparing Joanna's eyes to a lion's eyes, and hyperbole would be Kino found the pearl of the world. Kino is describing the pearl as the most beautiful thing he has ever seen and thinks the pearl is like no other. An example of a paradox is when Kino describes that he hears the music of the pearl.
John Steinbeck uses diction to communicate his disdain towards the doctor. The author's choice of words such as chamber, dressing gown, high bed, and silver all build this character to an indulgent man. However, Steinbeck also uses words like fat, horse, flesh, puffy, and silly to describe a man who is unappealing, repulsive, and gluttonous. Steinbeck seeks this man's outer ostentatious persona and juxtaposes it with his inner vacant soul. He is repulsed by the doctor who supposedly has so much and is still empty.